They say, if you love someone, let them go. But for some people, letting go doesn't feel like love. It feels like loss before it even happens. There are individuals who don't just fear being alone. They fear being left, quietly, suddenly, without explanation. And so they hold tighter. They overthink small changes in tone. They notice distance before it's even real. But here's the part most people don't see. This fear isn't dramatic. It's silent. It lives in the spaces between messages, in delayed replies, in the subtle shift of someone's attention. Why does the mind prepare for abandonment, even when no one has left? And what does it cost to live like this? In this reflection, we explore the hidden psychology behind the fear of abandonment, not as weakness, but as something deeply human. Let's begin. There are moments when everything seems normal on the surface, a conversation, a laugh, a simple exchange of words. And yet, beneath that calm exterior, something subtle begins to shift. Your character stands among others, engaged in conversation, but his eyes quietly scan their reactions. A slight pause, a delayed response, a tone that feels just a little different. And suddenly the mind begins to whisper, something is changing. He crosses his arms, not out of confidence this time, but as a quiet form of protection. His expression still carries that familiar smirk, but it feels thinner now, like a mask holding something deeper in place. Why does a small silence feel so loud? Why does distance get sensed before it even exists? This fear doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't demand attention. It lives quietly, in observation, or in anticipation, and often no one else sees it, because from the outside he looks composed, but inside he is already preparing for someone to leave. There was a time when connection felt simple, before the mind learned to read between silences. Your character now sits alone in a quiet room, scrolling through old messages, not searching for answers, but for patterns. Moments where replies came slower, where warmth felt inconsistent, where presence felt uncertain. He leans back, eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to understand something that was never clearly explained. Because sometimes the fear of abandonment doesn't begin with something obvious. It doesn't always come from being left completely. Sometimes it comes from being almost held, from affection that arrived then disappeared, from attention that felt real, but never stayed long enough to feel safe. A child, or even a younger version of him, learns something quietly in those moments. Connection is not stable. Closeness can change without warning. So the mind adapts. Now, even in the present, he notices shifts others might ignore. He remembers emotional patterns others forget, not because he wants to, but because once it mattered. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet belief formed. If you don't pay attention, you'll be left behind. The mind does not create fear without reason. It remembers. Your character walks slowly through a crowded street, people passing by, voices blending into noise. But his attention isn't on the crowd, it's on his phone, on a single conversation left unanswered. He pauses, reads the last message again, then again. Not because the words changed, but because the meaning might have. Why does the mind search so deeply in something so small? Because for someone who fears abandonment, the brain begins to operate differently. It becomes alert, scanning for emotional shifts the way the body scans for danger. A delay is not just a delay. It feels like distance. A short reply is not just brief. It feels like withdrawal. This is not overreaction. It is pattern recognition shaped by emotional memory. Your character exhales slowly, slipping the phone into his pocket, but his thoughts don't follow. Because the mind is trying to do something it believes is necessary. Prepare. Prepare for silence. Prepare for change. Prepare for the moment connection fades without explanation. But here is the quiet paradox. In trying to protect itself from loss, the mind begins to live inside it, even when nothing has been lost yet. Closeness is something he longs for, but also something he struggles to trust. Your character now sits beside someone close enough to feel presence, yet not close enough to feel safe. He leans slightly forward, listening carefully, nodding at the right moments. Attentive, engaged, almost too present. Because when connection feels fragile, it is not simply experienced, it is managed. He replies quickly. He gives more than is asked. He adjusts his tone, his words, even his silence, all to keep something from slipping away. But at what point does holding on become pressure? Why does the desire to stay connected slowly turn into fear of doing something wrong? He smiles again, controlled, measured, but his eyes flicker, searching for reassurance that isn't spoken. This is the quiet conflict, wanting to be close, yet fearing the very closeness you seek, because the more something matters, the more fragile it begins to feel. And so, without realizing it, he holds tighter, not to control the other person, but to protect himself from the moment they might let go. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when something begins to shift, not outside, but within. Your character stands in front of a mirror, arms no longer crossed this time, just still, observing. For once, he isn't watching someone else's reactions. He's watching his own. The pauses, the thoughts, the way his mind fills in silence with stories that were never spoken. He tilts his head slightly, that familiar smirk softening, as if seeing himself more clearly than before. And a question begins to surface. Is it really them? Or is it something carried from before? This is not a moment of blame. It is a moment of recognition. Because sometimes the fear was never about the present. It was shaped long before and quietly carried forward. He exhales slowly, stepping back from the mirror. Not with answers, but with awareness. And something subtle happens in that space. The need to react softens. The urge to assume pauses. Because for the first time, he is not just inside the fear. He is looking at it. Staying has never been the difficult part. It's trusting that something will stay. That feels unfamiliar. Your character now sits in a quiet setting, someone beside him. Not too close, not distant, just present. This time he doesn't lean forward. He doesn't adjust every word or search every expression for meaning. He simply sits. The conversation flows, pauses, continues again, and for once the silence doesn't feel like a warning. He glances briefly, then looks away, not out of fear, but ease. His arms rest naturally, no longer crossed in quiet defense, because something has shifted, not in the other person, but in how the moment is held. Why does everything feel calmer when nothing is being controlled? Because the mind is no longer trying to predict the end of something that is still here. He listens without scanning, speaks without measuring, exists without preparing for loss. And slowly, connection begins to feel less like something fragile and more like something that can simply be experienced, not guaranteed, not controlled, but not constantly feared either. And in that space, something unfamiliar begins to grow, a quiet sense of staying, without needing to hold on too tightly. There is a version of you that does not wait for things to fall apart, a version that does not read distance into every pause or loss into every silence. Your character now walks forward, not chasing, not holding back, just moving. People pass by. Some stay for a while, some don't. And yet, he keeps walking, because the understanding has settled quietly. Not everyone who comes close will leave suddenly, and even if they do, it does not erase your ability to feel again. He pauses for a moment, looking ahead. that familiar smirk returns. But softer now. Not a mask, not protection, just a reflection of something lighter. Because fear once shaped how he held connection. But awareness changed how he experiences it. And maybe that is where something new begins. Not in certainty, not in control, but in the quiet acceptance that connection can exist without constant fear of losing it. If something in this reflection felt familiar, if you've ever found yourself noticing small changes, preparing for distance, or holding on a little tighter than you meant to, you're not alone. This experience is more common than it seems, just often unspoken. Fear of abandonment doesn't make you weak. It means something, somewhere, mattered deeply enough to leave an imprint. And even now, that part of you is not trying to create pain. It is trying to protect you. If you'd like to stay connected to reflections like this, a space where the quieter parts of the human experience are explored gently and honestly, you're always welcome here. And if you feel comfortable, you can share your thoughts below. Sometimes even a few words can remind someone else that they are not the only one feeling this way.